Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast. I am Matthew, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Calvin.
Hey man, good to see you as always, dude. So today we're back with our ninth episode of our Disney podcast, Disney series, and we're sort of getting stuck into the Renaissance now. We've been doing this forever, man. We've been doing this forever, but we're finally getting consistent good movies at least. For the most part, So I'm gonna pass over to my good friend to explain what four movies we're going to be talking about on today's episode. So Callum, off to you, mate.
Yeah, so as you said, it is sort of a rare instance where we get this many good films in one episode. And as you said, it does seem like we've been doing this for a very long time. It's certainly our longest running episode franchise, isn't it? I believe before this it was Pixar, which was 6 parts.
Six, yeah.
This has leveled that up certainly. Today we'll be talking about Pocahontas, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, and Mulan. I had seen The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I hadn't seen any of the other films. Which had you seen before today, Matthew?
I had seen Pocahontas before this, and that was it. So just the one movie as well. But no, I had a good time with it, man. A good time with it. But yeah, as Callum said, those are the four films we're going to be talking about today. Thank you to everyone who supported us recently. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on these films down below. We'd love to hear them. And if you have any questions or podcast suggestions, email us at moviematespodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, shall we crack on with our first film of today then, dude?
Yeah, and I feel that our nostalgia will be evident today because I feel that probably our favorite of the lineup today will be ones that we're actually familiar with. So we'll start with Pocahontas, and this film is partly rooted in history. It's about the English discovering America, or the New World as it's referred to in this film. And we can't really attest to the film's level of accuracy because neither of us are history experts. I would say that the most that I know about it we learned in English literature GCSE when we were doing about
Yeah.
the Tempest. We did a bit of context around the 11th century. So I don't know much about it. Do you know much about the history that this is based on?
Nothing at all, buddy. I'd done some research after the film and how different this film is to the actual history of Pocahontas. But the culture, the Native American culture, it's something I find so interesting. It's not something I know a lot about, but it's something I'm very eager to know a lot more information because it's a very fascinating culture and it's actually deep rooted in British history as well. So it's gonna be I think it's gonna be a good wee discussion, buddy. But what about yourself? Did you know much about it?
No, just a tiny amount. I knew that Pocahontas and John Smith didn't actually have a real life romance, and the Pocahontas was like a child. But she's basically just the point of view character of the Native Americans in this film. So yeah, we'd probably say it's not an accurate film whatsoever.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but uh, but I
definitely not.
still think it's good nonetheless. And I think that the smartest decision that this film makes, and it's sort of in contrast to Peter Pan, which was sort of supportive of colonialism. This film makes the English the objective villains of the film because they're plundering, they're stealing, they're pillaging this culture.
Hmm.
And we'll talk about that further throughout the film because obviously the villain of the film is the general of the English soldiers. Uh, but how did you feel about that? Did you respect that decision?
I really did, man. I think Pocahontas is an incredibly captivating character, and she actually might be my favorite Disney character to this point. I think she's a fantastic lead. And yeah, like you said, the English colonists are definitely the villains of the film. With Governor Ratcliffe and characters like that. So it's I think it balances that quite well, and because it's told from a Native American perspective, I think it's quite fair, and it's not like it's not a story that's been told many times before. So I think a common theme of this episode is going to be Disney, or like sort of sharing stories and sharing tales about stories that we would have otherwise been unaware of. But no, that I think it handles it really really well here.
Yeah, and we've talked about in The Lion King that Lion King and Pocahontas came out quite close to each other, and The Lion King was actually Disney's B team, animation wise, and they were surprised by the huge success of The Lion King because it was created by the animation team that was considered subpar. But visually, you can really see that this is Disney's A team. Like the crispness of the animation is incredible.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this is probably one of the best animated films so far in our series, and I think it really mixes that really well with the songs here. There's really good mix of songs as well, and there's actually a surprisingly, for an animated Disney film, especially in the '90s, there's quite a list voice cast. Mel Gibson is in this, and also Christian Bale is also in this, which blew my mind as well. So no, it's certainly a surprising film for sure.
Yes, and now that you've mentioned Mel Gibson as John Smith, I think we can talk a little bit about the romance presented
Go
in
for
this
it, yeah.
film. I mean, I would just like to say that John Smith is quite clearly an absolute piece of shit. Uh, sorry if there's some rustling in the papers. I usually type my notes, but today I used
You're all right,
just
man.
loose sheets of paper. Uh, the only reason he actually considers the Native Americans humans are because the first one that he interacted with was a pretty lady. He's kind of like that. He's like that guy who says, "Oh, I'm not homophobic. I've got gay friends."
Yeah,
Like so.
yeah,
So he's like, you know, oh, I didn't come to murder Native Americans because I find one Native American that I find attractive. Like
yeah.
his whole reason for shifting perspective is you know the he finds someone sexually attractive. Like he's just an absolute piece of shit.
Yeah, like yeah, no, I would agree with you on that point, buddy. To be honest with you, the character does grow on me throughout the film. I will be honest. But at the start, I was a little I suppose I was a little pessimistic on where his character was going. But as the film went on, I actually really enjoyed the romance, and there's a very sweet line in there where John goes, "I'd rather die tomorrow than live 100 years not knowing you." I thought, what a line! That's actually a very good line. Cringy, all the may as well be cringy, but um, yeah, I do think you're right. I do think you're right though. Certainly with the opening 45 minutes to an hour of the film, he's not the best character to have as your second lead.
Yeah, and we talked about the fact that the English are presented as the villains of the film, but really by the end it's just the character, as you said, of Ratcliffe. The English soldiers for the most part do shift their perspective after seeing John Smith's like resolve and the fact that the Native Americans have sort of like embraced them lovingly and said, we won't start this war, so there won't be a war. Basically, at least by the end of the film, there's no real violence inflicted. Is there? I watched this film uh, quite a while ago. There wasn't. I know that Ratcliffe like led an attack on the Native Americans, but there wasn't really bloodshed by the end, was there?
No, no,
Aside
no,
from the
not
fact
a
that
massive amount. I don't
aside
recall.
from the fact that Christian Bale's character Thomas murdered the character of Cocoam, and there's
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely no justice for that. He just fucks off back to England with no consequences
yeah,
whatsoever.
yeah.
But we talked about the fact that for the most part the English are presented as the villains, but a very weird decision by the film is uh, the English characters and the Native American characters both sing the song "Savages," and they sort of like intercut it, with the native singing it, the English singing it, which sort of made this weird character comparison as though they're the same, even though that the English are the villains. They're saying that the Native Americans view the English as savages and vice versa, but it's not saying that the English are objectively wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose the film, from that perspective, it's trying to suggest that from the Native American side, they view the English as savages, whereas from the English side, they view the Native Americans as savages. But I think the main message of the film should be that the English are just, as you said, buddy, objectively just in the wrong here. And that being said, there are a few good characters in there. Um, but that being said, there's a lot of like it definitely is obviously sanitized from the actual events that happened in real life. But that being said, I think the film just does just enough to portray them as the villains, but it could have maybe went even further. I think, especially with the music.
Yeah, and Matthew, you've talked about the fact that at least by the end you appreciated the romance, and this film is sort of like a sweeping romantic epic in the manner of like Beauty and the Beast, but at least Beauty and the Beast had this sort of passage of time, where there are several months that are sort of montaged through. Here, John Smith was maybe in the New World as it's referred to here for maybe a day. So I think Pocahontas loving him is just insanity, really.
Yeah, and that being said, I really did enjoy the bittersweet ending. Pocahontas choosing to stay with her tribe. It's sort of, I think that would have been a better ending for the Little Mermaid here, with Ariel and Prince Eric. I think here it does it right. Like Pocahontas is a strong, empowering character in her own right. Do you know what I mean? So I think she made the right decision.
I mean, like, how does the like again? I watched this so many days ago. Like, how does the film end? Does John Smith go back to England,
Yeah,
or does he? Yeah, bloody like good on him.
good on
Yeah,
him.
piss
Yeah,
off. Yeah, no, Pocahontas deserves better. So I'm glad the English fucked off at least. I don't really have anything further on the film, because it goes on for so long, but not a lot happens, and the characters that are here that are eventually presented as like either morally ambiguous or at least turned around to be good by the end of the film. I just don't feel that way. I'll never be convinced that the characters of Thomas and John are good people, especially because Thomas
fair.
shot Kocoum and has absolutely no consequences for it.
That's fair, man. That's fair. But if you've got nothing else to say, buddy, I'd love to hear your rating for this one.
So I didn't really enjoy this film. I didn't enjoy watching it, but I can respect the quality of the animation, the fact that for once we have the representation of racially appropriate actors. Did Disney finally righting a wrong that they've done for so many years previously? That this one of the first instances where they get it right. So I do respect this film for making that pivot change. At least for the first time that I've noticed it. So I respect this film in a few manners, especially its portrayal of the English, because Peter Pan did such a horrific job. When we absolutely slated that film for it. If you want to listen to that, that's Disney Part 3, I believe.
Yeah,
Where we get into some weird shit in
we
that
do.
in that episode. But we do talk about the racism scene in Peter Pan, especially. So I didn't enjoy this film, but I can appreciate its quality. I'd give the film a 6 out of 10.
That's fair enough, Callum. Fair enough, buddy. Yeah, for
I
me,
feel like we're gonna have quite different ratings,
yeah,
Matthew,
I think so.
based on what you've told me.
I'm a huge fan of this one, actually. I think Pocahontas is an incredible lead. I think she's fantastic. Also, a young Matthew had a little crush on her, so fair enough.
Surprised.
And also, I think the villains are good. Ratcliffe is he's intended to be the villain in that sense, and he's good. And I think the voice acting spectacular, animation one of the best so far. I think it's a very sweet romance by the end, and I really respected Pocahontas in the ending. And I'd give it a 10 out of 10. One of my favorite Disney films. So it is. It's one of my favorites.
Okay.
But I suppose we can move on to another Disney film, buddy. And is it Hercules next?
Next is The Hunchback of Notre
Hunchback.
Dame, I
Hunchback.
believe.
Cool. Cool. Cool.
So Matthew, this is a film that did you watch this morning or last night?
I split it between, so 45 last night, 45 this morning.
Admittedly, I absolutely love this film, and you'll hear exactly why. But yeah,
I can see why.
you
I can
really
see
feel
why.
the runtime on this one. Like I watched the other three like all the way through in one setting, but this took a couple of goes for whatever reason.
Yeah, this one is actually real. I think it's really underrated.
Yeah, I think runtime wise, it's just because the film's so like dense and dark. I just needed a bit of a
Hmm.
break from
Yeah,
the
it's
from
certainly
the
one of the
like
darker
bleakness.
ones, if not the
Yes,
darkest one.
I definitely think it is definitely ranking among the most dark. And this film opens with Quasimodo's origin told in song. And in literally any other movie, I really would have hated that. But I find it really interesting here and refreshing compared to like the stilted narration that we've sort of seen in most of like storybook fairy tales. If you compare this to like Beauty and the Beast, at least where his origin is told in song here, with the bells of Notre Dame, which is probably one of my favorite songs in the film, aside from one other, which we'll hopefully go on to talk about. I really enjoyed that part of the film. How do you feel about the opening?
Yeah, I thought the opening was fantastic, and like that, the woman's death, ends up being Quasimodo's mother. It came out of nowhere for me, and that's quite a classic Disney thing for us to say at this point. When characters die, but we still think they're alive. Like Frollo just pushes her onto some steps, and I thought she was just knocked out, but she's just dead. And I thought that was it was quite a heartbreaking opening because Quasimodo, like he's definitely a character I think you're obviously supposed to feel sympathy for, but like it's a very dark opening as well with like Frollo. He was about to throw him down a well as well, but to kill a kid, which is really dark for Disney. But that being said, I think the opening was really well handled with the music, and the music just in this film was generally great. It's just can't I don't have a bad thing to say about it.
Yeah, and I think that Frollo is one of the worst Disney villains, as in morally. and that's evident right from the start, especially in that he secludes Quasimodo from society and then blames him for like the idea of having imaginary friends in the gargoyles. I was wondering, after having seen the film, do you think that the gargoyles were magical and alive, or do you think that they were all in Quasimodo's head? Because for the most
Oh,
part, I thought they were imaginary, but then at the end, they're sort of firing like
yeah.
like fiery bullets of stone at people. So I didn't know whether that sort of just added to the to the question of that.
Yeah, if you take that out of the film, I think there's definitely a serious argument for them to be just creations in Quasimodo's head, which would make sense considering he's spent like 20 years up there in a, cathedral just all alone. So no, that's really interesting. Actually, I'd never actually considered that. But that being said, I think they're very good additions to the film.
Yes, and honestly, I think that Quasimodo is maybe the most likable protagonist I've ever seen in any film, which is a big
Yeah.
statement to make. But he doesn't have an ounce of malice in him, and he reminds me of the personality of one Matthew. I will not say your surname, but
Stop
just
it,
the
you. Stop
you
it,
know
you.
unending kindness, in his
Thank you,
heart.
sir. Thank you. So the same goes for you, man. The same goes to you. But I'd have to agree. I think Quasimodo, you got to feel bad for the discrimination he receives from people. Like he has a really great heart because the film, like I wouldn't blame him if he wanted to like pursue Esmeralda like for a romance, but he just by the end he gives them their blessing and they and Esmeralda and what's the other guy's name? The blonde prince,
Phoebus.
Phoebus. Yeah, they end up being together. So I think it's fantastic and. You know, I think the fact that Quasimodo he's just such a sweet like a sweet guy who is just there's just nothing but good in him. He's a fantastic protagonist in my opinion.
I mean, I think that this film very easily could have gone like the route of Joker, where he's sort of secluded from
Mm,
society, he's treated like shit by literally everyone, and then he sees this one girl, becomes obsessed with her, and then kills everyone. I think it
yeah.
very easily,
Hmm.
a person could go one of two ways, and I'm glad that Quasimodo embraced the light instead of what
I
we
agree,
see
man. That's a really great
happen in
point.
Joker.
It's a
And I
fantastic
think
point.
honestly, the Feast of Fools torture scene is one of the most devastating scenes I've ever witnessed.
It's
And I
really
think that
yeah, it's brutal.
anyone who's sort of experienced bullying in their life, I think it's going to be a tough watch because you're sort of just reminded of how horrific it is to be sort of laughed at for being different, and it's genuinely horrible to watch, I think.
I agree, but it was very uncomfortable to watch, to be honest with you. And it's really sad as well because, like, as we sort of said here, he is such a lovely guy, and it's just because of the way he looks, people just shit on him. It's sad to see, and I'm glad Disney is sort of definitely condemning that and sort of shedding light on that this sort of discrimination. It gets into this discrimination with the gypsy community here as well. And that's something I don't know a lot about, but it certainly seems interesting. And like Esmeralda as well. I think she's a really fantastic co-lead as well. She's so sweet and she's sort of I would argue just as much as a main character than as Quasimodo is.
Yeah, I don't find her as compelling a character, but yes, certainly she shares almost equal screen time, and also she acts as the main plot driver because
Yes. Hmm.
the all of the heroes are in love with her and all of the villains are trying to kill her, well, and also are in love
Yeah.
with her,
Yeah.
as seen in my favorite song within the film, which is Hellfire, sung
That's
by
mine as
Frollo,
well. Yeah,
and I
it's
can
so
tell
good.
you. I 100% forgot the Frollo being horny for Esmeralda plot, and it may just have been that I watched this maybe 8 to 10 years ago, and it just went right over my head because I just didn't understand it as a child. But it is actually it's bizarre because he it's kind of the Pocahontas storyline taken darker, where they have this you know sort of unexplainable hatred for this one community, and then this one person that they're attracted to, is just an exception in their mind.
Mhm.
And here, he hates her entire community, but is just sexually, attracted to her, and it's just I just hate Frollo so much. He's
Yeah,
such a piece of shit.
he's one of the most detestable villains I think in that we've seen so far in Disney. And yeah, that whole subplot, it's weird, but I think it's well handled. And I think he definitely gets his comeuppance by the end of the film. Um, but I think the film, it's one of those films, again, I don't have a lot of notes on, but that's because there's nothing really bad about it. It's just so good. And the ending, in my opinion, I think it's a really good message. Because a lot of these Disney films, or just films in general, with a character who is discriminated against because of the way he looks, it would have been very, we've seen this in the Shrek movies as well, where Shrek wants to become handsome in the second film, and he does become handsome. But in this film, I'm glad they didn't like turn him into a handsome prince or anything like that, because that would have just tarnished the message for me. I'm glad they just kept him who he is, like a good person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, he became a hero in his own right just because he was a good person. I definitely agree with you, and I think one thing that we haven't really touched on hugely is the romance within the film. And I had sort of mixed feelings on the fact that Quasimodo was a bit intense with Esmeralda, and then obviously he doesn't end up with her. But I read an interpretation on the internet, on how someone felt about the romance, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on
Go
this.
for it, bro.
Someone said that Phoebus was the right guy for Esmeralda because whilst Quasimodo sort of viewed her as an angel, and she was completely perfect, and Frollo viewed her as like a sexual temptress, Phoebus loved her for her flaws and for her virtues. So in that explanation, he was the right guy for her. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, like the Phoebus Esmeralda romance, it's one that I think it definitely starts off slow in the movie, but throughout the film, I think it builds and it builds, and like that relationship strengthens. But I'm one thing I am definitely glad I'm glad that Quasimodo isn't jealous or envious of that relationship. By the end, he gives them their blessing in many ways, and it's a sweet relationship between all three of the characters. I think there's a very strong pairing there for all of them. And no, I think that's a really interesting interpretation for sure. What are your thoughts on it, Callum?
Well, conceptually, I had an issue with the film ending with the attractive woman getting together with the attractive man. You can't force a relationship. If you're not attracted to someone, you're not attracted to them. I don't think you can morally blame anyone for that. And as you said, Quasimodo gives his blessing. He doesn't seem jealous. So I think we sort of have to go with that character and see. You know, he's a very kind person. Kinder than any other person in that world, as we say. But I think we just have to go with how he feels, and he does genuinely seem happy for them.
He
So
does, yeah,
I
yeah,
have to go with that character. And I
for
think
sure,
their
bud.
decision in the end of the film to have Quasimodo saved by Phoebus sort of gave me stronger positive feelings towards that relationship.
Completely, Cal. I think you've smashed it there, bro. Absolutely.
Uh, I don't really have any criticisms of the film. Quasimodo is just a beautiful, forgiving, and unproblematic soul. Uh, you know, uh, I can't read my own handwriting.
Oh, mate, that's
Um,
always an issue for me as well. Like my handwriting's not that it was any good beforehand, but mine has really went down the drain since we
like
last.
especially because I've been using like shorthand because I didn't want to write out Esmeralda like 18 times. But Esmeralda wasn't the one for him. But I would like to see him, pursue a successful relationship in the future. Hopefully,
Absolutely.
when we cover the sequel, Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, I'm hoping that there's some positive romance
That's
there.
exactly what I was hoping for as well. I'd love in that film if Quasimodo found his true love.
Did you have any further thoughts on the film, Matthew?
Nothing from me, buddy. It's one of those where I don't have a lot of notes, but all my notes are just positive thoughts on it. To be honest, mate, I'd love to hear your rating, dude. If you've got nothing else.
So I couldn't overtly criticize anything about this film. It has some of my favorite music of any film. I love sort of gothic classical music, and to see that in this film, I would have expected that to maybe be on the dull and dreary side. Disney wise, I sort of prefer the lively, upbeat, memorable music like I've seen in The Little Mermaid. But here I think it really works, especially with the tone and the setting. It's all completely consistent. The romance by the end, I was completely sold, and Quasimodo is one of my favorite protagonists of any film ever. So I would give the film a 10 out of 10.
Brilliant, buddy. I think you've smashed it there, and I'm the same. I think that the film a really fantastic protagonist, a really sweet romance, and a really happy ending as well. And I think a really enthralling final 15 minutes with incredible animation. So I'd have to agree with your consensus and give it a 10 out of 10 as well.
Wonderful.
Awesome,
So
dude.
the next film that we'll be talking about today is Hercules, and I think my notes are actually no. Uh, again, my notes aren't that extensive on Hercules, and my notes on Mulan are even shorter. How did you feel just uh generally about this film?
Well, I'll tell you what, buddy. This film is probably the one that has surprised me the most out of any Disney film so far. This is probably, I think, one of the most underrated Disney films ever, in my opinion. I think this is right up. I think this should. I don't know if it is, but I think this should be considered right up there with the classics like The Lion King and Aladdin. I think this is just an absolute marvel of kids animation films. This is just spectacular. What about you, buddy?
Yeah, with our sort of the Disney's previous ventures into mythology, like the Sword and the Stone and the Black Cauldron. I appreciated what the Sword and the Stone was doing, and I actually quite like the Black Cauldron. But I would say that this is far superior.
I agree.
A
Yeah.
far superior take at mythology. And yeah, I would say it is the biggest surprise that I've had because I expect to be thoroughly bored by this film, but like I was engaged, right from the first second. I think it was just Zeus, in his sort of smiley, good
Yeah.
dad nature. People sort of talk about like Mufasa as like the definitive, great dad within the Disney universe, but I think that Zeus
Zeus
is
is up.
a pretty incredible dad here.
Absolutely. And this is a very similar tone to Emperor's New Groove, in my opinion. Maybe that's why I love this film so much. But also, like you mentioned in Hunchback of Notre Dame, buddy, the opening song here is, I think that's exposition done right, really, to be honest with you. And the voice work in this here is fantastic. It actually has Josh Keaton as a young Hercules, who was our favorite Spectacular Spider-Man, one of our favorite shows growing up. So that surprised me as well.
And you've mentioned teenage Hercules there, and I just want to talk about that character. And like Quasimodo, within his town, he is ostracized for the way that he is. Uh, and how did that make you feel in this film? Because in this instance, it's not superficial, like it is in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. He actually is dangerous. Whether you want to embrace him for that and say he's a powerful hero, we could take him on, or we want to push him away. He is incredibly strong, by anyone's standard on Earth, and he is a danger as seen in one of the opening sequences where he destroys all of the columns within the city. And he recognizes that that city is not where he belongs, that he belongs either with the gods or on Earth, but with someone else, to sort of support him, as we see with Meg at the end of the film. So how did you feel about him sort of being pushed away at that point? Did you think it was like bullying in the same way that it was in Hunchback?
Yeah, that's really interesting, Callum. For me, it's a very similar vibe to Man of Steel in the sense that, in that film, a young Clark Kent is sort of ostracized in society. And maybe, well, obviously that's not because people know he has superhuman abilities, but just in general, like I think there's a very similar theme here to, it's a journey of self-discovery and a coming of age story, both Man of Steel and Hercules as well. And I think it's a really interesting one because, like you said, he is dangerous to society, I suppose, and it is goes back to like the Superman argument that we've sort of had this discussion back in our second episode about Man of Steel and things like that. But I think it's definitely a different discrimination than Quasimodo faces in that film because I think I think there's always I think without Esmeralda and Phoebus's help, I don't think society would have conformed to who he actually that he is actually a lovely guy and that people would see him for who he is because I think in this film, however, sort of Hercules has earned that by himself without any characters really supporting. Obviously, we see like Phil as well who has sort of helped him, but in this film, he sort of stands on his own 2 feet and sort of we see he is challenged by Zeus sort of to become hero to earn his godlike status once more. But it's an interesting one. What do you think, buddy? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think as you said with like Superman, we can't compare their experience to actual humanity. People like Quasimodo do exist and are judged for their appearance. In a horrific manner. They are judged superficially. But, we don't really have a real world comparison for Hercules, so it's difficult to feel bad for him because we can't understand the experience because we've never seen someone live through something like that, because we don't have people with superpowers or increased strength here, and anyone who would be you know the peak human condition with strength would actually be respected here.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously with his you know incredible powers, he is actually considered dangerous. So I don't know whether I feel bad for I feel bad for the character, because he deserves to have a home, and where he's been placed isn't right for him, at least at this time in his life. So I feel bad in that aspect, but it's also hard to sympathize with him when there isn't like a real world comparison.
It's a great point, dude. It's a great point. And one thing I had in regards to the Zeus Hercules dynamic was I had sort of said, surely Zeus, the ruler of all gods, can make some exceptions for his son to stay in Mount Olympus. Seem it's because it's sort of the film. It seems like he is unnecessarily challenging him, and I suppose maybe that's his role as a father because he wants to push his son to discover who he is and stuff like that. So I can respect it for that. But I don't know. It's a lot of the film I think could be deemed unnecessary from my point of view because I think if Zeus wanted to, he could have just allowed Hercules into the kingdom again. But that being said, I think it's a good message of sort of a coming of age arc, so to speak. But what are your thoughts, Callum?
Yeah, I definitely agree, because like King Triton in The Little Mermaid at the end of the film gives Ariel legs, and he isn't a god. He's just the king of the ocean. So I feel like a god could definitely have endowed Hercules with powers, given him godlike status, or at least given him entry into Olympus. And at the end of the film, where he decides to pursue a life with Meg, they remove his god status so that he can be immortal again and be amortal again, and then live his life with Meg on Earth. But I
Hmm.
feel like they could have come to the same compromise that both of us suggested with the Little Mermaid, where he could easily just anytime he wants to come to Mount Olympus, he becomes a god. Anytime he wants to go on Earth, he's a mortal
Yeah,
human.
yeah, yeah.
I really think that a compromise can be struck instead of committing to like one extreme.
Absolutely, dude. No, I think you're 100% right, 100% right. And I think the action in this film it is marvelous. Like one of my favorite scenes in the film is when Hercules fights the Hydra. I think that's just a marvel of animation. It's just so good. And we haven't really touched on.
Uh,
Are you not a fan? No.
well, I have written the CGI Hydra
Oh,
that
the CGI
Hercules
Hydra,
fights
yeah, not great.
dash awful question mark. So I didn't have strong feelings for it. I feel like if it was a film entirely made in CGI, it would have looked a bit rough in the 90s. But I mean, Toy Story was made in the 90s. I feel like a fully CGI film could have worked. I think it's just such a it's just such a juxtaposition going from like the flat 2D to then just
Yeah, it's
this
very
Hydra, and
Spider-Man
then
the animated series.
yeah, and then none of the villains like from then on are CGI. So I don't really see why it was necessary when they can do. They did dragons well, and even back in the days of like Sleeping Beauty. So I don't know why they couldn't just add a few more heads. And I think that the animation had caught up. I really think they could have made a high quality Hydra without CGI.
That's fair enough, Callum. I respect that, dude. I respect that. And one character we haven't really touched on is the character of Hades. And I think James Wood is the standout for me voice wise for Hades. I think he's spectacular. And the character, I don't really know if the film wants us to dislike him or like him because he is really funny. I think he's the most humorous character in the film. And I think he might be one of my favorite Disney villains so far. I don't really know if I could call him a villain because he seems like a nice guy for apart from enslaving people and stuff like that. But he seems like quite charming and stuff. But I don't know. I thought he was a fantastic. He's probably my favorite character in the film, other than Meg. So what about you, mate? What are your thoughts on Hades?
Yeah, I would say he's definitely my favorite character in the film and one of my favorite Disney villains. I think he's visually spectacular, and I think he actually has a sensible plan for once. The Disney standard is this the villain has like this outlandish, unachievable plan, or this very achievable plan, but they're too like inept to do it.
Hmm.
In this film, he comes up with a very simple plan. It's kill Hercules, kill the gods, rule Olympus. It's three steps. Like it's not a ridiculous plan. But his ability is sort of questionable when it takes him like 18 years to have hashed out those details.
Yeah.
I've explained it in three steps, and that took him the 18 years of Hercules' life.
Mhm.
If he had just maybe sped up his plans, by a few
Yeah.
years, Hercules wouldn't have stood a chance.
Yeah.
But in the end, it is a sensible plan, and I respected him for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, bro, absolutely.
Um, yes, at the end of the film, Hercules goes against Hades in this final battle before before Olympus is taken over. He fights Hades, releases all the gods. But he's been told that with because he's not a god, he can't enter Olympus. But then he does for that final battle. I don't
Yeah,
really understand it.
yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah, I don't know what was up with that. What was up with that? To be honest, mate. To be honest, but
Yeah,
that
because I mean, he's not meant to be able to enter because of his mortality. So I don't really know why that was the exception. I mean, maybe because Hades had taken over, the rules were different. But I would have liked a bit of clarity on that.
Yeah, and that final ending, the final battle, it's fantastic. And the character of Meg, she's a character I thought was just going to be like a side character, like when she's introduced, because she's introduced like reasonably late on in the film, like it'd be a third of the way through, half the way through, and I thought she was a really, really like complex character. I thought she was fantastic, and I thought the Hercules Meg romance was actually really sweet and really well handled.
Yeah, I think they did a lot of development really quickly, and they sort of redeemed her character with it, turning out that she was just fulfilling a deal because she had sold her soul for love. So I think that sort of forgave a lot of her transgressions in the film. But at the end of the film, she is actually killed, which was I was not expecting. But
No,
she
me
was
neither.
also crushed to death. So I don't really know what good like returning her soul to her body will do.
Yeah.
She just immediately got up and was like, "Yeah, Hercules, let's go." But I was more like, your bones are dust.
Yeah, I know. Like, no, I agree with you, man. Like, she'd probably be like in a wheelchair for the rest of her life at minimum.
Yeah, and we've talked about at the end of the film the sort of all or nothing situation where Hercules either has to return to Olympus as a god or go to Earth as a mortal. And I really don't think it's necessary if you have the power of the gods. You have literally complete control over the Earth. You can make your own rules.
No, so true. That's so true, man. Completely. And like that, I don't think this film has a sequel, does it?
It has a prequel,
Oh,
but
really?
not a sequel.
Oh, cool. Because I think a sequel would definitely really work well for this film. Like, I'd love to see where it would go because I think there's so many different sort of different dynamics you could go with. Like the mythology of Greece is so interesting. So I think there's so many different avenues you could go down. To be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there's been talks of a live action film directed by Joe and Anthony Russo,
Oh yes,
and
yeah, yeah.
sort of the person pitched to play Hercules. Do you know Noah Centineo at this point? From The Perfect Date.
No, I'll have a wee Google of him now. See
No,
if see if he would
and
fit.
from To All the Boys I've Loved Before. He's
Oh
an
yes,
actor.
yeah.
That's all I'll say. You know,
He
but
looks like Hercules, to be fair.
yeah, I feel like if you gave him a ginger tinge, like he could be a good Hercules because I don't think that you have to be a good actor to be Hercules. I think you just have to be energetic and dynamic. I don't think you need to be you don't need to be dramatic or sincere. I think you just need to be a fun presence, which I think he can do.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And I don't have any more notes, buddy. Anything from yourself, dude?
Nothing for me. So Matthew, I'd like to hear your rating of the film.
No worries, man. Well, listen, Hercules, I think a really fun film. I think it balances romance, humor, action, and character development so well. I love the Hercules and Meg romance. Meg and Hades, two of my favorite characters here, and Hercules is good as well. And yeah, love this film. Very similar to Man of Steel, tonally, theme wise. So I have to give it a 10 out of 10, man. I get another 10 out of 10, mate. I loved it. What about yourself, mate?
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't know if you saw on like the Disney Plus poster that it had. It was it looked very like grainy and low resolution. So I thought into this film, the animation have been like a step down from
Hmm.
the previous films that we had seen. And then immediately I was like dazzled by how amazing it looked.
Sure.
Aside from the scene with the Hydra, which was questionable at best. But yeah, I loved every character in the film. Uh, there were points where Meg was a little got on my nerves a little because she sort of talks like this sort of 1940s radio host, like wise guy, which is like, oh yeah, see, like it was like, this sort of weird speech pattern that I wasn't used to seeing, in these sort
Fair.
of films.
Fair.
It was sort of just as I said, she was an unfamiliar character, not a bad one. So I was just sort of taken aback, but not not critical of that. So I agree with you. I love the film so much. I would also give it a 10 out of 10.
Brilliant, buddy. This is a great episode so far for movies, mate. We've rated
Yeah,
all of them
I think
highly.
Mulan will also continue the trend. Uh, Mulan was a weird film to watch because I made one note at the very beginning because it was, very obvious. And then there was an entire hour where I just wrote nothing.
No, I'm
Because,
pretty much the same, buddy. A lot of my
you
notes
know,
are just castings and voice actors.
yeah, this film is a great film. It's a great war film, and it's a great, unique Disney film. But a lot of it is just sequences of war, sequences of training for war. I don't think it's unique for a Disney film, but it's not unique for a film. So I don't think there's much to say in regards to the middle. At least the second act of the film. I think there's very little to say. But if we sort of talk in a narrative sense, the film is basically based on the idea that Mulan lives in this misogynistic, patriarchal society in which the women are considered to only be able to bring honor upon their families through marriage. And by the end of the film, she has brought honor upon her family by fighting in this war. But I really detest the fact that she had to go to one of those extremes in order to make her family happy. She couldn't have just lived her life and been happy and pursued a career. It just makes me sad that no one in the society that was willing to give up their life in one way or another, either through commitment to an unhappy marriage or commitment to potentially dying in a war. If you just sat somewhere in the middle, you were just a disgrace to your family, and I think it's really an upsetting concept to consider.
Completely, Callum. Completely, man. I agree with you. It's very upsetting. It's saddening, and this specific slice of Asian culture, it's not something I know a lot about, but in a similar sense to my view and my knowledge of the Native American culture. But so I would have to credit Disney for showcasing this here. I think in the films that we've talked about today, there's a lot of diverse story arcs and a lot of diverse branches of history. And the film has a lot of dated depictions as well, about this misogynistic society. And to some extent, this I would imagine this sort of misogyny continues throughout the world today. But I think Mulan's a really compelling excuse me, a really compelling character. And it actually blew me away that Ming Na Wen is Mulan and she is
Yeah,
May from the Shield as well.
yeah, and I don't think if you I don't think if I knew that in advance that I would have picked up on that. But yeah, it was great to hear her again because she doesn't get a huge amount of roles, even though she's an incredible actress. She's known for being Mulan, May, and then she was in one episode of The Mandalorian. But aside from that, she doesn't get a huge amount of work, which
Mhm.
is really surprising because I just think she's such a fantastic actress.
No, I agree, man. And this film has a lot of great voice actors. Obviously, we have BD Wong as well from Jurassic World. We've talked about him before. And then one thing I thought was interesting was Jackie Chan provided the voice of Li Shang for the Chinese dub of this, which I thought was very, very interesting. But I didn't know that. And also, we've got a character that I suppose very similar to the exact same voice actor to Donkey and Shrek, Eddie Murphy as Mushu. And they're very similar characters, aren't they? Incredibly similar.
Yeah, and I think that this film would be pretty much exactly the same without this character. I think if you removed him and just had the cricket as a non-speaking role but doing the same things, the film would be exactly
I
the
agree.
same. Because I think that the one pivotal role that the character of Mushu plays is writing the letter that leads them into the battle where Mulan causes the avalanche. But I think that happens with or without that character because he sort of forges a letter from the general to say, "Son, you have to come and back me up." But I feel like had the general just written that, and there wasn't that sense of uh,
Mhm.
confrontation sort of between uh, you know Li Shang and like the assistant to the general. If the general had just wanted them there and they came too late, I think the film would be exactly the same. So it's a character that I don't think is necessary, but I didn't overtly dislike.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I'm the same, and I think what we've sort of mentioned this in Pocahontas as well. Like Disney is sort of, for the most part, righting their wrongs in relation to who's voicing these characters from different cultures. This is a predominantly Asian cast, which is nice to see as well. Obviously, we've got like a few other voice actors from other countries as well, but it's for the most part it's an Asian cast, and that's good to see because I think one of the things that's so incredibly pivotal to this film is the Asian culture or this specific slice of Asian culture specifically.
Yeah, especially because it's set so, hundreds of years ago in like imperial China.
Hmm.
So it's very very different from the China of today. So yeah, it is a very interesting look at that period of time.
Hmm.
And as I said before, I don't have much to say for quite a large chunk of the film. But when we get to sort of the revelation that Mulan, what was posing as a male within the army, and Li Shang's discovery of that, it's very clear to me that I didn't like really any male character in this film. The say Mulan's father and sort of the higher ups of the army were very misogynistic right from the beginning. It was very clear. I did not have good feelings towards Mulan's dad. I was like, yes, send that guy to war if he thinks women can't do it.
Yeah,
Piss off then.
yeah,
I didn't feel too bad. But it's sort of in that revelation moment. Every male character sort of made me dislike them
yeah.
because even the characters who don't want to see Mulan dead don't really want to fight with her at least until the very end. So at least in that moment, I had quite negative feelings towards all the male characters in the film.
Yeah, it's a great point, dude. And I'm the same. One thing about this movie I'm going to criticize is I'm confused as to what the overall message is because we sort of see Mulan. She's a very empowering female lead, and that's something that we haven't really discussed before. Like a lot of these films in recent episodes we're talking about have female leads. Little Mermaid, Pocahontas, Mulan. Like all of these films are you know woman focused, and it's great. But I'm really confused as to what the message is because we see sort of from the onlook of the film, through her family, especially her father's depictions of her. Milan must look pretty for men, and then there's even a line where someone goes, "You're too skinny," as well. And I get that Disney's condemning that, but by the end of the film, it sort of seems like Mulan is still conforming to her father's will, I suppose, because she wants to impress him, when she brings back the sword and things like that. So I don't know, but it sort of seems, yeah, like the male reaction to her posing as a man, because like she's saved all their lives, like she's been a hero in her own right, and it's sort of annoying that these other male soldiers can't recognize that.
Yeah, I think very simply, the message is just meant to be that, you don't have to be what society expects in order to bring on to your family. But, even, in doing what society doesn't expect of her and, being in the war, that's still a very, extreme thing where her life was threatened. So yeah, it's still not really saying that all women are accepted. By the end of the film, women aren't like liberated from the patriarchy, they're still very much within that, and she's an exception to that.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
she got to live her life the way she wanted to. Well, I mean, she never wanted to be a warrior, but she was forced into that, as opposed to being married. So she still doesn't get to live the life that she wants.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
there isn't really a happy ending in that sense, because
Yeah, it's a
the
great point,
world
man.
is still the same, despite her having been this huge hero. So I think the film could have done, it could have done more to criticize that. But obviously it's not saying that's a good thing, but I think it could have done more,
I
especially
agree. Yeah.
especially when this is being targeted at children, to say that this is a very negative attitude to have, and it's an example of toxic masculinity. I think this would have been a good opportunity to show young males that that's not how you treat women.
That's such a great point, man. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Callum, to be honest with you, bro.
Um, Yeah, the villain of this film, and I would have struggled to remember his name. Shang Wu is probably the least noteworthy Disney villain of all time, simply because he had, no motivation as a character, no plan, and no depth.
Yeah, I'd
Like,
agree,
would
man.
you have
Yeah,
even
yeah.
remembered his name, honestly?
Yeah, like yeah, I agree. I have no notes on him whatsoever, really, to be honest with you, buddy. Other than I was very confused as to how the Huns are surviving that avalanche, to be honest. But regardless, yeah, I thought he was quite lackluster, especially when compared to the likes of Hades and Frodo as well.
Yeah, and Matthew, the thing that we haven't touched on, we've talked about the attitude of men, but we haven't actually talked about the romance present in the film. The filmmakers of the 2020 version have actually changed the character of Li Shang because of the Me Too movement. They thought it was inappropriate, the idea of like a superior officer dating like a subordinate. Uh, I just wanted to ask you whether you thought that relationship was inappropriate because, in my perspective, he only pursues a romantic relationship after the war has ended and she's no longer under his command. You know, obviously
Mm,
they met under the circumstances of him training her, but I don't think he ever felt like he had power over her. You know, he gives her orders,
yeah.
but she doesn't follow them, and then she actually, you know, improves upon them. And he says, you know, at the end of that battle that she has his, well, you know, when he thinks that she's paying, he says that, you know, like they have his, you know, trust and respect really. So I don't know. Did you find it an inappropriate relationship?
Um, it's hard to say. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing them removing it, but that being said, like I think if they kept it in, I wouldn't have had a big issue with it.
Yeah, they've changed it so that there's a superior officer who is her mentor, and then like a fellow soldier who is her romantic interest. So they've split the character into two
Hmm.
to sort of give two distinct roles, which I think is an improvement. But you know, I don't think it was necessarily, you know, I don't think it
Yeah,
was necessary.
yeah. No,
Just because
I'm the same. I'd agree with you, bro. I
you
agree.
know, it's not like, you know, the character of you know, Li Shang isn't like flirting with her whilst they're doing battle, and he
Yeah,
doesn't go like, you know, he doesn't say anything creepy when he discovers that they're a woman. You know, so I didn't think that there was anything problematic about that relationship. Just that, you know, I would have liked that he had a more progressive attitude towards women.
yeah. No, that's a great way of putting it, mate. 100% progressive attitude towards women. That's I love that for sure, bro. For sure.
Yeah, so you know, I really this film just served to prepare me for like the live action adaptation because you know after I watched this film, you know, I watched several trailers for that film, and it's actually got me really excited to see sort of an extended version of this film with a bit more of a serious war tone. Like how do you feel about going into the live action
I can't
adaptation?
wait. It looks fantastic. And have they got the character of Mushu back?
They have not.
No, fair, fair. And like we said, it probably wouldn't have added anything anyway. But I'm super excited for this. But I don't want to like criticize it before it's even out. But I think it might struggle at the box office. Well, obviously it will struggle at the box
Oh,
office with coronavirus.
oh yeah, definitely.
I even think I don't know. I don't think it's gonna have the critical praise that the other films got. I don't know. I don't know why I'm thinking that or whatever. But we've sort of seen like The Lion King and Aladdin. I don't think those films have really recaptured the magic of the first of the original. So I hope this film does. Don't get me wrong, I really do. But I don't know. I don't know. I think it's going to be another film that'll do okay. It'll do okay, but it won't like blow anyone away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know, this animated film is, you know, an hour and a half long. It has the character of Mushu. It has, you know, these songs in it, and then all of that's been removed. So I'm wondering what they're going to put in to make it 2 hours. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
without music, without the character of Mushu, and you know, adding an extra, you know, nearly 40 minutes. You know, I'm quite intrigued to see, you know,
hmm,
how that pans out, and you know what they
absolutely, mate.
do to add extra context. I think that they're probably gonna, you know, I think the biggest change is going to be adding depth to the villains because they've actually added a second villain in this sort of like shape shifting witch, and they've added depth and sort of a revenge plot it seems for the main villain. But you know, almost every character is renamed, so we're gonna have to learn a whole new batch of characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Even Mulan has a different family name for whatever reason. Uh, you know, I actually
Cool.
I have no understanding of why they renamed the character, but you know, pretty much every character has a different name. But I'm really looking forward to that film.
Likewise,
So
bro.
Matthew, do you
Likewise.
have anything further on Mulan?
Nothing else for me, buddy. If you've got nothing else, Callum, I'd love to hear your rating for this one.
You know, I love pretty much everything about this film. It's probably one of the most original Disney films because we hadn't really seen a Disney war film before. You know, and you know this film introduced probably one of the most strong independent female Disney characters we've ever seen. She's not actually she's considered a Disney princess, even though you know there's actually no connection to royalty. You know, other than befriending the Chinese emperor. So you know, I love this film so much for that character introduction, and you know, I loved almost everything about this film except I would have liked a bit. You know, it to go further of the condemnation of the attitude towards women and sort of a, you know, at least you know, at least a look towards the future with, you know, a glance at the idea of progression by the end of the film. But you know, aside from that, you know, I did love everything about the film. You know, I found the romance appropriate. You know, "I'll Make a Man Out of You" is one of the best
So
Disney
good.
songs that I've ever
Yeah,
heard.
yeah.
You know, it's really incredible, and I sort of wish that, you know, the new film would have included that. But you know, I'm also happy with it to be entirely unmusical. But you know, I loved almost everything about this film, I would give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Love it, bro. Love it. Yeah, like you said, this is a really, I think, important film, like culturally and things like that. And I think Mulan, really incredible lead as well. Eddie Murphy as Mushu, I think adds a lot of humor and levity to the film. And there's a lot of great characters in there as well. Love the culture, and I think it has a good message, albeit I found it a little bit confusing. But when you look in deep at it, like it's a good story. It's got me really excited for the live action one, and I'd have to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I had a great time with this one, man. It's been a good day for movies today.
Yeah, I would say that that's probably one of our highest rated Disney episodes. We had the other day, Lion King, the Lion King, Aladdin. Uh, what else was there?
Beauty and the Beast and Rescuers Down Under.
Beauty, Beauty and the Beast and Rescuers Down Under. I would say that panned out similarly. I think my total for that was like 36 and a half. So I would say a similar level of quality to today. But in this instance, slightly improved, I'd say, because
Absolutely,
I would
bro.
say that sort of Mulan and Hercules and uh, and the Hunchback of Notre Dame are all on the level of Aladdin and the Lion King, and I think they're all exceptionally underrated.
I agree, bro. I agree. Well, listen, I suppose that we could hop into a little segment called Future Episode Chat.
Yes, indeed. So we have been building up to the Andy Serkis trilogy of Apes films. We've done Planet of the Apes Part 1 and Part 2. So our final part, Planet of the Apes Part 3, which will include Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes. That will be coming out sometime next week. And I'm really looking forward to speaking to you about that. I haven't seen those films in a long time. I saw War, when it came out. I saw Dawn, when it came out, and then watched it again. And I maybe haven't seen Rise in like 6 years
Been a
or
while since
something.
I've seen it as well. Yeah,
So I'm really looking forward to rewatching that trilogy and hoping that I have slightly warmer feelings for War for the Planet of the Apes than I did when I first saw it.
me too, man. Me too. I'm super excited for that one. And yeah, thank you very much for introducing me to another four films today, buddy. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, everyone who has watched this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on these films down below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, take care, everyone. Take care, Callum, everyone, and bye bye.
Bye.